Welcome back to Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 143, book review number 15. Tonight, we'll be looking at Horse Soldiers by Doug Stanton. Published 2009 by Scribner in New York, 393 pages long. I read this in the months of November, December 2023. Pretty good. Not outstanding in some ways, but it's important, compelling. Every American should read it. In reading the history books stretching back to the Old Testament, the Iliad, Caesar's Gallic Wars, some of the great books that came out of the American Civil War or the host of books on World War II, what we find is that civilization often depends on ordinary men who do extraordinary things at great cost. Our greatest stories are of heroes who fight and win, or even lose, but die nobly for a great cause. These stories must be passed down to the succeeding generations. When I look at our present generations, I think maybe we failed to pass those stories down. But Doug Stanton's Horse Soldiers is such a book. This story must be told and passed down. These heroes should not be forgotten. Their story enters the American saga as a story of remarkable things accomplished by remarkable men. If we only had poets in our impoverished culture, this story would be put to verse and recited around campfires as the Iliad once was. Now, don't get me wrong. The actual prose here, the writing, is not spectacular by any means. This book is not memorable because the author did such a wonderful job of crafting his sentences or paragraphs. No, this book is memorable because of the story told, the characters whom he is writing about, the history that is recorded herein. The book was not terribly written. It just was not well written. Now contrast that with maybe T.R. Fehrenbach's This Kind of War, about the Korean War, or maybe Mark Bowden's Black Hawk Down, about the battle for Mogadishu. Both are compelling reads, exceptionally well written. Maybe it was just me, but I didn't connect with Stanton's style. Yet he tells a story that is compelling and powerful. And so this book should be required reading for every ROTC cadet, every West Pointer, every commissioned officer in the U.S. Army. Now, Stanton opens his book in two phases. First, he opens with the sad story of the prisoner revolt at Kala-i-Jingi Fortress outside of Mazar-i-Sharif, Afghanistan. I probably butchered all those words. This story bookends the volume, starting and ending, yet also, in other words, the continuation of the story of Mazar-i-Sharif, the fortress there, starts the book, and then it's also at the ending of the book. But it also provides a thread that is carried throughout, and that's the tale of the American Taliban, John Walker Lind. Here's the sad tale of the only American fatality in this short campaign, the death of CIA operator Mike Spann, an American hero, a practicing Christian, a Marine Corps veteran. The second opening is the story of the attack on America on 9/11. Now, those of us who are alive then remember the trauma of that day, realizing that for the first time since Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, America had been attacked. And yes, I realize the Japanese also attacked the Aleutian Islands in June of 1942. So, we got attacked in Hawaii and Alaska, a year apart. Stanton includes the perspectives of the wives of the soldiers on that day, which is a classy touch and a crucial part of the story, and he returns to that frequently throughout the book. You simply can't tell the story of men at war without including their families, who pay a horrendous price. Throughout the book, Stanton includes the thoughts the soldiers had of their families back home, because that shows for whom they're fighting. The author then moves into the intricacies of the soldiers of the 595th ODA, 5th Special Forces Group, prepping for war, getting into all the paperwork, the supplies, the intel, and interestingly, the competition to be the first team in. And the movie makes a big deal out of that as well. This is something the civilian world may not get. There's a heavy intellectual side to the war, as well as that primal competitive side to the warriors who want to outdo the team next door to them. But again, my thoughts turn to the Iliad and as the Greeks compete for honor and glory with each other. Civilian world may look at these guys and think, oh, they're warmongers, war junkies. Stanton clearly does not frame it that way. He humanizes these heroes. He shows their longing for home, and yet shows that their knowledge that the best way to defend all they cherish at home is to do this job in Afghanistan to defend America. One of the major successes of the book, I think, is portraying the person of General Dostum of the Northern Allies. Now, here's another hero that is really magnificently examined and brought to the forefront of the story. Time and again, it's stressed that the Afghans here are the warriors fighting for their homeland, for their honor. This war is theirs. The Americans are there to just assist and provide some tools that will help turn the tide. Sadly, the book points out that it doesn't end up that way. In contrasting the book with the movie from 2018, 12 Strong, directed by Nikolai Fulswig, we see that the movie did over-dramatize some of the combat scenes here and there with Captain Nelson, but not really by much. The Green Berets did engage in a lot of intensive fighting, often running low on personal ammo. They were in the midst of it. But movies are an interpretive art form, so they make things a bit more dramatic. But there was a lot of drama in this campaign. Our soldiers often did not know if they're going to make it to the end and come home. And some did get seriously injured along the way. The book makes the point that this was the first U.S. cavalry charge since the late 1800s, a remarkable feat. To ride a horse against tanks and machine guns, RPGs, and mortars, that was incredibly courageous, and it worked. The author stresses the courage of the Afghan Northern Alliance soldiers and the heavy price they paid. Some of the details of the dead and wounded are included by Stanton. He doesn't spare us the costliness and ugliness of war. This story not only tells us of the courage of these American warriors, but of their capacity to serve as ambassadors, advisors, representatives of the nation to a foreign power. These Green Berets were doing the job they'd been trained to do, except the riding horses bit. Nobody had ever trained them to ride horses. I wonder if that's now standard practice in their training course that they go through. The main problem that I had with the book is that I read it post 2021, obviously, and the big Biden sellout that turned over the country to the Taliban. Reading this history with that knowledge gave me kind of a sour note throughout. I mean, you're reading it and you know the rest of the story. 20 long years of fighting, of mismanagement, poor leadership, thousands of dead soldiers, crippled, wounded, traumatized, only to walk away in the end. Watching the end of this on TV was so incredibly like the end of the Vietnam War that I saw as a teenager. The evacuation of the Saigon embassy. All the heroics of this fine story that Stanton wrote, ultimately for what? To give the Taliban control. So yeah, there was a heavy sadness that permeated the reading of this book, and it became kind of heavy for me. took me a month to read this book, and it probably, it's probably twice as long as it should have been, simply because it was hard. It was an easy read, but it was hard emotionally. All the cautions by General Dostum in the book came true, and the movie brings that out as well. The book is written in this popular manner, but it is heavily researched. I mean, I looked at the credits in this book. I mean, the author does some extensive interview research all over the country. He worked with the Green Berets there at Fort Campbell. He worked in Afghanistan interviewing Afghans. I mean, this guy really put it in, but he chose to write it in kind of this informal style. There's no footnotes anywhere, there's no endnotes. Much of the dialogue is in the popular vein of, hey, you make up a dialogue that reasonably fits. And that's a common thing in history books. I get that. I mean, that's even people writing their autobiography. I mean, they carry on these conversations. It's like, did you really remember that conversation from 50 years ago? Well, they remember the gist of it. And so that's what Stanton is doing here. And somewhere along the line, I think this is the key to why the writing simply didn't connect with me. I wanted a bit heavier approach, maybe more formal. But, that's a personal taste thing. So why should you read this book? The book covers this brief period in history during which America was attacked and we responded with our best warriors. They were the tip of the spear. These Special Forces soldiers and the CIA operatives forged an alliance with the Afghan people who hated the Taliban. And the book brings that out. They hate everything that the Taliban stands for. Now this book is full of red meat, of battle sequences, of action, of guys shooting their weapons and getting bombed and mortared. I mean, this is full of real action. But it also covers the subtle parts of the war. Leadership, diplomacy, the black market, civilian market. I mean, this is a lot of details here about life in the warrior community and life in the war zone. It's written in this non-technical, popular level, and it made the bestseller list when it came out. But the story is a cautionary tale as well, because now post 2021 and the Biden bug out, we know the rest of the story. But buy this book and the movie 12 Strong, read the book, then watch the movie, and remember, this is what American heroes look like. It's a tale for the ages. Some of these Green Berets, when they retired, they formed a whiskey company. And so here is Horse Soldier Bourbon, a company owned by these Green Berets. And it is actually quite a good bourbon. They have several different selections. This is the High Rye Mash Bill, which is my favorite. But part of this metal plate on the bottle, the metal plate, the stamp that makes that is made from steel from the Twin Towers. Now there's another book that is written by these Green Berets, Swords of Lightning, that tells the story more from their perspective. So, Stanton is kind of an outsider, and some of the Green Berets, at least one that I talked with personally, don't like Stanton or the book. And so he pointed me to this book that the Green Berets themselves had more to do with. So, that's Swords of Lightning by Mark Nutch, Bob Pennington, and Jim DeFelici. And so, there's that. All right, well, that's it for this episode of Stab the Dragon. Out here.